Good morning. So, I'm gonna try this again because I really was not happy with how it came out last time. So, I just decided, you know what, I got time, I'm gonna do it again. Okay, so, if you didn't watch the last one, thank you. But, just the gist, not the best day for me, only because my allergies have decided today is not a good day. So, meds are starting to kick in, feeling a little better. Hopefully I can get through this one without being quite so distracted. So, the topic is, I don't want to work myself to death. So, the reason it came up was because, like I said, I wasn't feeling good today, and it started to get me thinking about being sick and going to work. The reason I want to talk about it is because I feel like we don't always acknowledge some of the issues that come with being sick and working. And I want to talk about it again because I've gone through a couple of different work environments where I have paid days off to be sick, or I don't have paid days off to be sick. And then another thing I want to talk about is the way we feel when we do have either one and we feel guilty about taking them. So starting with the first one, not having paid days off to be sick. So when I was in college, I was doing a lot of part-time work, mostly as a waitress, mostly as like various little side gigs, and almost all of these are hourly. And the thing with being hourly is you don't usually have paid days off, either vacation, either sick days, and things like that. And part of it is because I was part-time. Now, when I would get sick, I usually just had to power through it. And this isn't always something that you can do because sometimes you get really sick and you really need to stay home, but it's really hard for people who are hourly to take any sort of time off. And the reason is because most people who are hourly need that money. They can't give up days of no pay because they're not feeling well, because the majority of the time they're either living paycheck to paycheck or this is their supplemental income that'll keep them afloat. So when they take days off, they're giving up days of pay that they can't always afford. And I remember being in that position where fortunately I was still living at home and my parents were able to take care of me, so if I had to take days off, it wasn't a huge deal for me. But it still meant that I didn't get paid that day. If I wanted to go out with friends, I wouldn't have any money for it. The gas to go to school would be a little tight, and it just affected my bottom line of how much money I had to use and save. So when it came to getting sick, I usually just tried to figure out if I was sick, that I just felt tired and I could still go to work, or if I was sick and I needed to rest. And we really shouldn't have to decide how sick we are that we can't go to work. And for me, I've always had issues like getting colds and sinus infections because I have pretty bad allergies when it comes to things like dust and mesquite and animals sometimes, that when it acts up, I don't feel good. I don't feel great. And if I don't take care of it, it can lead to things like sinus infections, which require me to go to the doctor and get antibiotics and all of that stuff. So it's really important that I take care of my allergies when they come up so that it doesn't get worse. However, being young, I felt like I could power through it, I can get through it, and I was usually just sick for longer than I needed to be because I wasn't addressing it. And there's a lot of people who were like me who do that, but for different reasons. Either because they're the breadwinner, and so if they take that day off, they are losing money that they can't afford to lose. And that really shouldn't be the case. Sorry, my cats are fighting. They always do that. We shouldn't feel like we can't take days off because we can't afford to. Now, I understand if it's taking days off to have vacation with your family, which is a different issue, and it's also important. But when you're sick, you should have that ability to take the time off to get better, because it's really important that you take care of yourself. And it's been talked about all the time that if you don't take care of sicknesses, they can get worse. Like I said, my allergies aren't really that big of a deal, but when I don't take care of them, they can lead to sinus infections. And if I don't take care of that, this few months ago, I had a sinus infection that led to pink eye, that led to cellulitis. And it's not because I didn't take care of it, that's a completely different issue, but that's just the progression of what can happen. If you get sick and you don't take care of it, it gets worse. You get sicker and you end up having to take more time off, or you end up having to pay more money to get better. And that's not okay. So we need to learn that it's okay to take this time off, but then as employers we have to figure out Can they schedule more time? Sometimes there's an options to work from home. Like if they're doing something that's purely on the computer, it can all be done online. Maybe you can offer them a chance to stay home and do their work. Or, hey, maybe you can do overtime another day. Or work with your employees to see what can happen, because if employees that come in sick, if you're in the food industry, shouldn't be a thing, because when you get your food handler's license, it's something they tell you. If you're feeling sick, like if you have a cold, or if you have like dripping, coughing, sneezing, things like that, you really should not be working, and it should be a thing that your boss sends you home. But if you're in other industries that interact with people, you can get other people sick, and you can lower productivity because now you have an entire department that's sick instead of just this one person. So it really benefits in the long run to send employees home, or to allow them to be sick and stay home. But for the ones that are working hourly, that are living paycheck to paycheck, maybe you work with them. Give them an option to work from home, come in to do overtime. Maybe you have another task for them that they can take care of while still taking care of themselves. Maybe you can let them come in on the weekend and make up the work. There should be options for them that doesn't lead them to losing out on all of this money that they can't afford to lose. Which, now bringing to my next one, maybe you do have paid time off, but I've noticed that a lot of industries, if you take that time off, they guilt you. So it's, oh, are you sure you can't come in because, we're really swamped today, or it's really busy today, it's not a good time. And here's the thing, nobody plans to get sick. If I had a choice, I would never be sick. I would rather go to work every single day than to be sick, because I hate being sick. I feel gross. I don't like it. And then I start to feel guilty too, because I get oh, well, it's a really busy day. It's not a good time. Are you sure you just can't come in? And I wish I could say, yeah, no, you know what? It's really not that bad. I'm just being dramatic. But sometimes I really just don't feel good. I remember that when I had originally moved to San Antonio a few months in, I had a full-time job where I was working as a receptionist, and it was a Thursday night. Fortunately, it worked out in like a weekend type thing, but that Thursday night I couldn't sleep. I had been coughing. I'd gone to the doctor and they said I just had a cold or a cough, and so I had some cough medicine, but I was coughing. I wasn't feeling good. I ended up with a fever of like 104. Tried to talk myself out of going to the emergency room because it's the middle of the night. My mom talked me into it. Went to the hospital. Ended up on Sepsilar. There's a whole story. But the point is, I didn't feel good. Ended up in the hospital. Ended up like on bags of antibiotics. Went to the pharmacy. Got my medicine and then went home. All of that said, I really didn't get enough sleep that night. I was still feeling sick. I had just been in the emergency room. My mom had come up and gotten there in the morning. And I still tried to go to work. Why? Because I felt guilty. I felt bad for having to call my boss and say, hey, I really don't feel good. I was just in the hospital last night and I really think I should stay home and rest. Now, they were really sweet about it, and they were like, okay, I understand it's not like you wanted to go, and everybody just kind of let it go. But I also remember when I came in, there was a lot of like, hey, you messed out, or you're just abandoning us that day, or you just decided to take the day off, and everybody had been getting sick at this time. And what it ended up being is I had bronchitis. And I still felt this need to go to work. And I'd been sick all week with it. I just didn't know what it was. And so I felt like I couldn't leave because they always had this pressure of, we're depending on you and you need to be here and you absolutely cannot miss a day of work. And that's the way it is in a lot of industries and a lot of places. It's always, you can't take a day off. And if you do, you're going to compare you to other workers who don't take a day off, and maybe it'll prevent you from getting a promotion. And it really shouldn't be that way. And I'm sure there's not as many places as I feel like there are that do that. But it's still an important thing to remember that it's never a good time to take a day off. Even if you have them readily available to use, it's never going to be a good day. And you're never going to choose to. If I had a choice, like I said, I would never be sick. But sometimes it happens. You get sick. Things come up. If your kids get home and there was sickness going around at school and they got sick, odds are you're going to get sick. And you just have to stay home and take care of everybody. But sickness happens. It's not planned. It's not convenient ever. But it needs to be socially acceptable, and it needs to be workforce culture that it is okay to take a sick day when you aren't feeling okay. Which leads me to the next one. We need to stop feeling so guilty about inconveniencing other people because we get sick or we get hurt or we need to take time off to take care of ourselves. it's always this big deal whenever I feel sick that I feel guilty because I let everyone down. Whether I had sick days, whether, it could even have just been like the slowest day and nobody even missed me. I still feel so guilty for having taken a day off. And it shouldn't be that way. It should be that, look, I don't feel good and I need to take care of myself. And I will come back the next day, or I will come back when I'm feeling better and knock my work out of the park and make sure I catch up, make sure that nothing fell through the cracks because I wasn't there. It should be okay, and I shouldn't feel guilty for taking a day off. And you shouldn't either, because it's not like you decided that, I just don't feel like it today. It's, I'm not feeling good. I either got sick, or my depression's acting up, or my anxiety's acting up, or it's not a good day for me, and I'm overwhelmed, I'm stressed, I'm burnt out. Whatever your sickness looks like, it should be okay to take care of yourself. Whether that means going to get a cup of soup and just staying in bed and resting to let your body do its job, or going to see a therapist, or, maybe your therapist said, you gotta go and spend a day in the park where you're just not worried or stressed. That needs to be okay. You need to be able to take care of yourself without feeling so guilty. And I think part of it is just this workforce culture that we only gonna hire exactly what we need, and if you leave, the entire machine falls apart. And it shouldn't be that way. It should be that if everybody does their job well, we can survive if one person or two people get sick, because the reality is it happens. And I understand that small businesses, it's hard to hire more than you need because, you don't have the budget to do that. But it still needs to be okay for your employees to not show up because they're feeling sick, or they're not doing okay, or a family emergency came up, because nobody wants these things to happen, but they happen, and it needs to be okay to go, because if they go and take care of themselves in the long run, they're going to come back, they're going to feel more productive, they're going to feel grateful that you understood, and they're going to want to do more for you. They're going to want to give back to somebody who gave to them when they needed it. And that goes for a lot of things, but it's really important to remember that in the workforce, in the workplace, because it hurts you a lot more when people aren't feeling well or not doing well to have them there and be unproductive. And fortunately, I've noticed there's a lot more movements, there's a lot more common support around people taking time off to take care of themselves. There's becoming more managers and leaders who understand that sometimes life happens and you need to just take the day, or you need to go home early, or you catch a cold, or a family member dies, or a friend dies, or you're just not doing okay in your life right now. It needs to be okay that you go home, you take the time you need, and you come back and you do better. Now, I understand that there's a lot more to this than I can understand because I've never been an employer. I've only been an employee. So if you're an employer and you have an opinion on this, or you want to share what your policy is or how you feel on the subject, let me know. Get in the comments. Tell me what it is that you feel on this subject and go from there. Maybe we just need to start the conversation to see what works. And I understand, because my husband was telling me about it the other day, that sometimes there are people who take advantage of this. And there's always going to be that one person who's like, well, I just don't feel like I'm going to work now. I'm going to throw in a sick day. And I can understand how they're not making it easy for you to make this available to everybody, but you have to understand that there are people who are going to need it. There are going to be moms whose kids get sick and they need to be home with them. There's going to be people who just catch a cold or have really bad allergies or are struggling with mental illness, and they need a day to get better, to come back, to be able to do better work for you. And there's all of this stuff that fortunately we're moving in the right direction, but we still need to open up this conversation to see what works, to see how we can make it better for everybody. And hopefully in the future, this won't even be a thing. People will watch it and be like, this isn't a problem. This isn't a big deal. And that's where we want to get, because it shouldn't be a big deal that you get sick. It shouldn't be the end of your career if you're not feeling well, or your family needs you, or you need you to get some time off. It should be as simple as, hey, today's not happening for me because I'm sick, because something happened, because whatever, and I need to stay home. And I hope we get there. Thanks for listening.